Hello, my name is Tristram Hooley and I'm giving a series of lectures for the Inland Norway University of Applied Sciences looking at the context for career. In this lecture I'm going to be looking at the issue of migration. So the story of career guidance is really strongly linked to the story of migration. The origins of career guidance, particularly in the United States, are as helping to manage both external international migration and internal migration into the cities. So large numbers of new workers, of new people coming to a city and needing to find work that was suitable for them, that they could do, required this new technology of career guidance. And so in this picture we see people arriving in Boston in the early 20th century. Perhaps a few days later they would arrive in a vocational guidance bureau and explore what they might do in the new country. So career is very strongly linked to migration and mobility, but career guidance itself is also strongly linked to it. So migration decisions are often explicitly career decisions. People move from one place to another place in order to pursue jobs, to pursue work, to pursue opportunity, and to pursue education. And those decisions are explicitly career decisions, of which the migration decision is secondary. In other cases, migration decisions might be forced upon people or to be made without an explicit and obvious career opportunity. But inevitably, all migration decisions have an impact on our careers. If we move from one place to another, inevitably it changes the way in which our career goes. So the poet Rumi says life is a balance of holding on and letting go. And migration really encourages us to think about this in terms of career. When somebody is making a change in their career, they inevitably have to let go of some things. They let go of one job perhaps to take up another job. But when we start to think about migration that is linked to career, we start to see that the process of holding on and letting go is more complicated. So for example, to take up a new job in another part of the world or another part of your country, you might have to let go of a relationship or of the opportunity to see your parents or your children every day. And these processes of holding on and letting go mean that migration decisions really bring out a lot of the key difficulties and challenges that are associated with many other career decisions. So across the globe, there are over 272 million migrants. About 3.5% of the world's population are classified as migrants. Migrant rates were rising until about 2010, after which they began to slow down. And since then, really the overall population of the overall proportion of the world's population of migrants has remained fairly stable. But that doesn't mean it always will do. It's very difficult to predict future levels of migration, as migration is often highly sensitive to a range of contextual factors. Now, in 2019, Norway had net migration of about 25,000 people. So Norway is not one of the biggest net migration countries in the world, but it is seeing a sort of steady number of people arriving. And so this issue of international migration is important because it really encourages people to think about who are these migrants. And of course, this migration population, this migrant population of the world, covers a vast number of different people. So in these terms, the figures that come here from the UN, migrants are classified as people who are living in a country other than their birth or their citizenship. And And so it may include people who have been resident in countries for quite long periods of time. But the sort of idea about who migrants are and what migrants are doesn't always encompass the reality. So migrants could be everybody from extremely wealthy, high skill, high uh, wealth individuals, perhaps sailing their yacht from one place to another and moving to a different country. But it also could include displaced people moving for asylum or because they've experienced oppression in their own countries. So migrants will encompass a very wide range of people. And it's also important to recognize that there is a large amount of in-country migration. So people don't just move between countries, they also move within countries. And according to Statistics Norway, about 45 people for every Norwegians move around the country from one county to another every year. And many of them will be following educational pathways, perhaps going to university or to a vocational college, or perhaps taking up some kind of new job. And so we see that migration is not just something that affects people from different countries moving across the world, but also it is something which affects individuals within countries. And it shapes the experience of people's careers, because the experience of living in Oslo is very different from the experience of living in Finnmark. And the kind of labour markets we might experience in those different places, the opportunity structure that we might experience in those different places is very different. And that's what drives people and enables people to move. But as we say, they are also thinking about what they're holding on to and letting go as they do so. Migration is sort of encouraged by what are often described as push and pull factors. So the push factors, the things that push you away from the country in which you live, might include things like war and conflict. It might include political instability, persecution and oppression. It might include environmental change. Perhaps the area in which you live has been flooded or has recently experienced extreme droughts. It might be to do with poverty. The pull factors are the things that drag you to the particular country that you go to. And so that might be either the actuality or the belief that there is economic or educational opportunity. It might be to do with language links, so that you can perhaps speak the language, or perhaps some other kind of historic link that you have with that country. It might be to do with existing family and community who have already migrated into that area. And of course, transport links also play an important role as well in migration. And this discussion that we've had of the different kinds of experiences that people have of migration, so ranging from people relocating with extreme wealth for fantastic opportunities in other countries, through to people being forced out by war, perhaps only carrying a few of their possessions and ending up in another country that they perhaps didn't choose. Trying to account for that, one of the concepts that sociologists and geographers have come up with is the idea of mobility capital. This is a kind of link to other capitals that we might have talked about before, so financial capital, cultural capital, and so on. Essentially, the argument is that successful migration is dependent on a range of attributes that individuals have, and that might include money, it might include access to transport, to language, cultural awareness, having locally relevant credentials, networks of support, and so on. Take all of these things together, and we can see that some people have mobility capital. And so this woman in the picture here is perhaps choosing off of a list of possibilities of places that she might like to go, while other people might find themselves forced to end up in particular countries and to have very little capital when they arrive in those countries to make the best of their new environment. And this leads us to talk about the idea of spatial justice, the idea that actually there might be injustices in where people live, in how the opportunity structure in their environment is organized. Now, neoliberalism views individuals as components of a global financial system. It often ignores the links that people have to places, communities, and families. And so migration, both internal and international, is expected and encouraged for people who want to have a good career. So you might be told or be talking to a client who says, well, I would really like to stay with my family and my community, but the things that I want to do, the opportunities that I want to do, the career success that I seek is only available if I move. And so that kind of issue creates issues of injustice. And one of the problems is that if we as careers professionals encourage people down that line, encourage people to pursue migration as a way of achieving career success, there is a danger that it runs the risk of asset stripping communities of those individuals with the greatest mobility capital. So perhaps individuals who are young, who have high skills, who don't have a lot of ties, are able to move. And that might be good for that individual. That might actually end up with that individual getting more money, more opportunities, and so on. But it may not be good for the community in which they come from. And I think as career guidance practitioners, one of the things we're doing is trying to help people to think some of those issues through, some of those ethical dilemmas through, as they're working within the sort of injustices of the different places and spaces that they come from, and seeing migration as the only way in which they can achieve some of the opportunities that they hope to achieve. So here are some references that might be useful for you in thinking about some of these issues of migration and spatial justice. And in summary, I would say that a substantial minority of the world's population migrate every year. The process of migration is inevitably bound up with career. And different people have different levels of mobility capital which allow them to navigate migrations with varying levels of success. Dominant ideology tells people that migration is expected if they can't build a career in their locality. But I think career guidance professionals need to be aware of the challenges associated with migration and to discuss this with clients. Thank you.